On October 11, 2006, about 1442 Eastern Daylight Time, one a Cirrus design SR-20. November 929 Charlie Delta, operated as a personal flight, crashed into an apartment building in Manhattan. A certificated private pilot who was the owner of the airplane and a passenger who was a certificated commercial pilot with a flight instructor certificate, were killed. One person on the ground sustained serious injuries, 2 people on the ground sustained minor injuries, and the airplane was destroyed by impact forces and post-crash fire. The flight was operating under the provisions of 14 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. Conditions 2 prevailed at the time of the accident and no flight plan was filed. The accident airplane departed Teterboro Airport, New Jersey about 1429 and was cleared for a VFR visual flight rules departure. According to air traffic control, the pilots acknowledged that they were to stay out of the New York Class B airspace. After takeoff, the accident airplane turned southeast and climbed to an altitude of about 600 to 800 feet. When the flight reached the western shore of the Hudson River, it turned to the south, remaining over the river, then descended to 500 feet. The flight continued southbound over the Hudson River until a beam of the southern tip of Manhattan, at which point, the flight turned southwestbound. 6 Radar data from John F. Kennedy International Airport, Newark International Airport and Westchester County Airport indicated that the accident airplane's altitude varied from 500 to 700 feet for the remainder of the flight. About 1436, the airplane flew around the Statue of Liberty, then headed to the northeast. As the accident flight proceeded north along the East River, it approached the northern end of the East River exclusion, where the floor of the Class B airspace transitioned from 1,100 feet to the surface, effectively requiring either a 180 degrees turn to reverse course or an ATC clearance. About 1 mile north of the Queensboro Bridge, the airplane made a left turn to reverse its course. Radar data indicate that the airplane was in the middle of the East Channel at the start of the 180 degrees turn, as opposed to beginning the turn from the eastern shoreline. It seems to me that they initially underestimated the required space and thus did not bank very steep in the beginning of the turn. However, later, upon realizing their error, they could have turned right and then come back over the East River for a wider turn. Sure, there would have been some paperwork and some explaining to do, but that would have been after a happy landing and staying alive. And not be determined whether the pilots were aware of the winds. Because the turn was initiated at 40 degrees to 45 degrees rather than the minimally required 50 degrees, the pilot increased the bank angle to attempt completion of the 180 degrees turn. The airplane was only about 75% through the 180 degrees turn when it approached the western shoreline of the East River. Due to the complex accident forces involved in the crash sequence, it is not possible to determine who was the pilot in control of the accident flight. The pilot-rated passenger was also a certified flight instructor and qualified to fly the accident plane. Although the owner had only 88 hours in single-engine airplanes, he had the basic airmanship knowledge and skill required to perform the pre-flight planning for and to conduct the accident flight. No injuries were noted for the owner, potentially consistent with his use of the controls at the time of impact. The safety board medical officer reviewed the autopsy results, and the extremity injuries noted for the pilot-rated passenger, who was seated in the aircraft right seat, were potentially consistent with his use of the controls at the time of a substantial impact. On the basis of the injuries noted, the most that can reasonably be concluded is that the observed injuries do not eliminate the possibility that the pilot-rated passenger was on the controls at the time of the accident. However, these injuries are not entirely typical of injuries from such a source, and the complex accident forces may have resulted in such injuries from other sources. This accident is a sad example for lack of preparation. The pilots did not seem to know the actual wind conditions. They did not seem to know how much space they had available to them. And for what it's worth, they did not even seem to have a plan just what they would do once they would reach the end of the East River. The accident could have easily be avoided using the right amount of bank, which was well within the envelope, or simply by using all available space by circling over the entire width of the East River, which would have been perfectly legal.